Greetings and welcome to the channel. This is Michaela from Team Retrogue, where we like retro games and the devices that bring them to us. In this video, we're going to take a look at the Aya Neo Next Lite. This is a budget Windows handheld that runs a lower powered chip but has a lot of potential behind it. So I'm going to touch on some of the most important details about this handheld for both PC gaming and emulation, and we'll see if this budget device is worth your hard-earned dollar bucks. So let's jump in and let's get to work. This is normally where I tell you where you can get the Aya Neo Next Lite. However, the website currently shows that the handheld is unavailable and expected in early April. Now, I want to talk a little behind the scenes about this handheld and how its release was handled. Normally, Aya Neo will put their devices on Indiegogo with an early bird price, and then after release, it'll go on sale at the retail price on their website. However, this was a very different release. Pre-orders went live on January 31st, and they actually started shipping the next week. So I received my unit on February 9th, which was exactly a 9-day turnover from placing my pre-order to actually receiving my device. This was a very surprising release structure from Aya Neo, and really, more handhelds need to be released this way. However, with the positives, there are always negatives. The budget early bird price of $299 has now passed, and the unit will sell in April for $349, and that starts encroaching on Steam Deck territory, considering you can currently get the Steam Deck in the US starting at that $349 price point. The unit was originally set to ship with Hello ISO, which is a version of SteamOS that, according to Aya Neo's own website, is, quote, optimized and compatible by the official Aya Neo team. However, after some blowback by the community, the company backpedaled and shipped the device with Windows 11 Home instead. That was probably a good choice because, come to find out, that the Hello ISO image is not in good shape at all, and you cannot even use the Aya Neo buttons with it. TDP controls also aren't working. So as much as I wanted to cover the experience with Hello ISO, I feel that I can't properly review an incomplete operating system, so this video is going to focus primarily on the Windows experience. With that out of the way, let's hop on our mount and ride into Spec Town. This device is powered by an AMD Ryzen 5 4500U CPU with Radeon Vega 6 graphics. There is 16 gigabytes of LPDDR4X RAM on board, as well as a 512 gigabyte M.2 full-size 2280 drive. The device features a 7-inch 800p IPS OCA laminated touchscreen and a 47-watt-hour battery. For connectivity, the device utilizes Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2. There are 3 USB-C ports on this device. 2 are fully featured with display out and charging, and 1 is for data only. There is also a 3.5mm headphone jack, and the device ships with Windows 11 Home. Now for a quick unboxing and first impressions. The box still manages to maintain the premium experience of opening up an Aya Neo device with a colorful retro-looking box. Inside is the unit, as well as some plug adapters for travel, 2 USB-C adapters, and a 60-watt charging brick. Taking a quick tour of the device, you'll notice that the triggers appear to be made of kind of a cheap plastic. Now, these are still Hall sensing triggers, but I'm not a fan of this material at all. This same cheapness can also be seen in the Aya Neo buttons on the bottom right of the device. Usually, these buttons are labeled, but here, they're just blank, cheap-looking buttons, which contributes to the fact that this is a budget handheld. You're also missing the two function buttons that Aya Neo usually puts at the top of their device, which makes navigating Windows more difficult than it needs to be. On the positive side, this device has really nice full-sized hall-sensing joysticks, and despite being 725 grams, the Next Lite feels very comfortable in the hand, and I have enjoyed long gaming sessions on this handheld. Now, regarding storage, there is a full-sized SSD in the device, but there is absolutely no micro SD card slot, and that 512 gigabytes fills up fast if you have a lot of PC games and you also plan to emulate higher end systems. So I went ahead and purchased a 4TB hard drive off Amazon because I wanted to see how hard it would be to replace the hard drive for people who may need more storage. And it's not hard to unscrew the device. There are about 8 tri-wing screws on the back and 1 screw each on the top and bottom. Aya Neo didn't hide the screws like they tend to. The hardest part about the entire hard drive swap was removing the backplate. It was on there good, and I'm pretty sure I scratched the plastic a bit when prying it off, even though I was careful. However, once I finally got the backplate loose, the hard drive was right there, front and center, and so it was very easy to swap. I did have a bit of difficulty getting my clone Windows drive to boot, but once I booted it up in safe mode, I was good to go after that. And now that I have a 4TB hard drive, the lack of an SD card slot is suddenly not so bad. However, this takes the budget out of budget device because it cost me an extra $200 for this hard drive, bringing the total up to $499, which definitely encroaches on Steam Deck territory and makes this a less desirable device. The lack of an SD card slot also handicaps this device in other ways. For example, you could boot into Gelos using this chipset, but you need to connect an SD card reader or a USB-C drive. And who wants an unwieldy drive sticking out of their device? One should not have to shell out extra for a new hard drive just to make this experience more enjoyable. Now let's talk briefly about performance. Now I'm going to be doing some performance showcases in a future video, so let me know in the comments what you want to see running on this device. But for now, I'm just going to touch on the little bit of testing that I was able to do in the week that I've had this handheld. So let's start with Palworld using the AAA game setting in Aya Space with a cap of a 15-watt TDP. Now this game does run at very low settings at 800p, and it does reach 30 frames per second, but sometimes that performance will dip a bit. I have not seen it go below 25 frames per second, and this game never felt unplayable using these settings. I was able to play this game for an hour, and during that hour the battery went from 81% to 20%. Genshin Impact also runs very well at low settings at 30 frames per second. The frame rate is stable, and the game runs under the normal game setting in Aya Space with a cap of a 12-watt TDP. Now we're going to keep to that normal game setting of a 12-watt TDP for the rest of this video. So under that normal game setting, we're going to try some high-end emulation with the Wii U version of Breath of the Wild running on the Cemu emulator. Now, in order to get this game to run full speed, you do need a mod called FPS++, which you can find right in Cemu under the graphics packs. Before I turned this setting on, I was only averaging 18 to 20 frames per second, but after enabling FPS++, I'm getting full speed or close to it, and the TDP only caps at 12 watts. But most of the time, it actually hovers around 8 or 9 watts, and this is very playable as long as you turn on that FPS++ mod. Switch emulation with Yuzu is also promising despite this being an older chipset. Tears of the Kingdom running in handheld mode with no other tweaks or mods maintains a steady frame rate of about 25 frames per second, and under the normal game setting also hovers around 8 or 9 watts, but sometimes it will stay consistent at 11 or 12. This game remains very playable, and because this is an 800p screen, there's never any need to run Yuzu in docked mode, which helps the device when it comes to efficiency as well as power draw. Mario vs. Donkey Kong seems to run at a stable 60 frames per second, except for some dips when shaders are caching, and the same thing goes for Super Mario Wonder, which sometimes spiked up to the full 12 watt TDP, but for the most part stayed about at 9 watts, which means that you would probably get close to 2 hours of battery life playing this game on this device. Now, in preparation for this video, I did have a lot of conversation with I Do Care in the Retro Handhelds Discord, and he reports that Gelos can potentially run more efficiently, so I'm going to go ahead and test out performance with Gelos in a separate video. But just from the testing I was able to do with this device in Windows, I was pleasantly surprised by what it is capable of at the $350 price point. Now it's time to wrap things up with my final thoughts, and I'm going to start with the positives. First thing being the price to performance. For $349, you're getting a solid Windows handheld with some fairly decent performance. I was fully prepared to explain all the things this handheld couldn't do, but was pleasantly surprised by everything it could do. And because the device has an 800p screen, it draws less power from games, which should make battery life slightly better than expected on more powerful devices. The ergonomics are pretty darn comfortable, and the device does not feel its actual weight. It actually feels lighter somehow. I also feel that it's worth noting that this handheld is also pretty snappy when navigating Windows. Part of why I didn't really care for low-powered handhelds like the Loki Zero and the Anbernic Win 600 is that the chipset was so low that the operating system itself would lag when doing basic tasks, and that's not a concern with this device. Everything is snappy and responsive. But of course, no device is perfect, so here are some things that I'm not a fan of with this handheld. I don't like the material that the triggers and some of the buttons are made of. They come off as a little too cheap and almost seem like a kid's toy. The lack of a micro SD slot makes things much harder to expand storage if you are interested in doing that. Thankfully, the inclusion of a full-size hard drive means you only have to really upgrade your storage once. But unfortunately, that also means that upgrading storage is not a plug-and-play experience, so not everyone will be comfortable doing it. Then there's the problem with the price. When there are Steam Deck systems available in the US for the same price that have similar or better performance, SteamOS, a similar 800p screen, and an SD card slot, it becomes harder to sell the Next Lite when, for about the same price, or a little bit more, you can, as the kids say, just get a Steam Deck, brah. And the final negative is that yes, this is a fingerprint magnet. However, overall, I'm personally satisfied with this device, and as a tinkerer and handheld collector, I believe I will enjoy seeing what this handheld can do, and I am planning on doing at least 2 more videos on this device, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Is this a device that you are considering? Did you pre-order it? And what would you like to see running on the Next Lite in my future content? And please feel free to continue the conversation on the Retro Handhelds and Steam Machine Discords. It's where you can find me hanging out in between videos. And if you want to support the show, like these wonderful people on the screen right now, you can do so by going to my Patreon page. Links for all these places are in the video description. But that'll do it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and please be sure to like and subscribe if this video was helpful to you in any way. Every smash of that button helps the channel grow and allows me to get more content out to you. Until next time, bye for now, and don't stop believing.